All right, so we've seen how we're able to get to the 7.1 world with our application. We've ran the upgrade tool and we've done a little bit of modification of the application itself. Now, so far the story has been just that. We took the WAR file that is our application and we've deployed it just as is. As we've talked about in our lecture, behind the scenes, Liferay is taking that WAR and converting it into a WAB. Now, for the most part, this is going to be your first step. This is as far as you want to get before progressing further. Again, depending on timelines and what the future kind of holds for you guys, this may be the stopping point for you, at least until you get other things situated. The second part of this is converting that 6.2 architecture into what we do now in the Liferay 7.1 world, modularizing it using OSGI modules or bundles, depending on who you talk to. So this is what we're going to be going through. We're going to take our application that we have upgraded from the 6.2 to the 7.1 world and modularize it by following the OSGI sort of pattern that we have developed here in Liferay. So let's take a look at that. Let's go ahead and walk through those steps. Again, steps are going to be there on your right-hand side. Feel free to pause, fast forward, rewind as you need to. So this is just picking up from where we last left off. If you need to sign back in, feel free to do so. Just make sure to use the /c/portal/login URL. The sign in button might be broken. Anywho, let's go ahead and take a look at that. All right, so we're gonna head over to Liferay Developer Studio. That's on the right-hand side over here. And we're gonna be creating a couple of module projects. So what we're gonna do is head up to File, New, and Liferay Module Project. File, New, Liferay Module Project. And we're going to be creating a couple of modules along the way. So we're going to start off with the service layer or the model layer. So we're going to be calling this parts, not portlet, parts inventory. So parts inventory is going to be its name. For the Liferay version, we're going to switch it to 7.1. And then the project template is going to be Service Builder. So we're going to click on the drop down and then select Service Builder. Parts-inventory, Gradle, 7.1, Service Builder. Once you have all of those things confirmed, we're going to go ahead and click Next. We need to specify a package name. This is going to be where everything is going to be placed, just as we have done in previous versions of Liferay. So this is going to be com Liferay training and then parts, like so. Okay, so my next button is not there because this is the last step. So we're gonna click finish. In the Windows world, finish is right next to next. So that was kind of threw me off there for a little bit. So if we've created our service builder project, what we're gonna do next is we're gonna be copying the service.xml from our 6.2 application. We're going to paste it over in the 7.1 or in the module. We're going to go into the parts inventory portlet. So we're going to go into the parts inventory portlet and we're going to find our service.xml. So this should be under doc_root followed by webinf. At the root level is where we find service.xml. So doc_root followed by webinf. This is where you should find the service.xml. So once you're there, you'll already notice the version number has been updated to 7.1. So that's very convenient. I'm going to go ahead and highlight everything here and we're going to copy it. So Control A, Control C. Once you have that, we're going to be heading over to the service.xml of our parts inventory application, or I should say our parts inventory module. So this is going to be the parts inventory service, and then we'll find a service.xml there. To avoid confusion, I'm going to first close out the service.xml that we just copy and pasted from. Make sure you've already copied it, otherwise we kind of missed a step there. I'm going to clear out my other 2-3 tabs here just to give us a little bit more to work with. I'm going to go into the service.xml and we're going to highlight everything and then replace it with what we copy and pasted from the service.xml previously. Now, what we're going to do, just to avoid any clashing with what's already within our database, we're going to scroll up and we're going to be looking at the namespace here. So the namespace right here is inventory. You can add whatever it is that you want, but following the directions here on the right-hand side, I'm going to tack on or append OSGI. Once you have something different, go ahead and save the file. So we've taken our service.xml from our upgraded parts inventory portlet. We've placed it here within the parts inventory module or bundle. Again, this depends who you talk to. Make sure to save the file, and we're eventually going to run Service Builder, but we'll run it a little bit later. So that way we can kind of catch all there. So first part here is taken care of. So we have our service layer or model layer. Next up, we're going to be taking care of the view and the controller layer. So let's head over and take care of our permissions beforehand. So we're going to head over to the parts inventory service if you're not there already. And we're going to be creating a new folder. We're going to be creating the directory that's going to be housing our default.xml. So it's going to follow a very similar directory that we have done before in the 6.2 world. So what I'm going to do is right-click the parts inventory service, and we're going to be creating a new folder. So heading over to new, followed by folder. So we're going to be creating a couple of folders along the way. So it's going to be source, main, resources. Make sure you have the S here on resources, and then resource dash actions, multiple actions. Once you have that, go ahead and click finish. So source main resources, resource dash actions. So I'll click finish. It's going to create that file or folder directory for me. Inside of the resource dash actions, we're going to be creating our default.xml. So we'll right click the resource actions, heading over to new, followed by file. And then the name of the file, as we just mentioned, is going to be default.xml. Once you have that squared away, go ahead and click finish. So clicking finish on my end creates the default.xml. For the most part, we are all ready to go. We may just copy what was over previously, but we have some of our exercise files, some of our snippets that's going to help us along the way. So let's click on our filing cabinet, the files here, and we're going to go up one level. We're still in 03, upgrading Portlet plugins. We're going to go into the 3.3.13 folder, and this is where we're going to find our default.xml, or at least the structure or the skeleton of it. I'll go ahead and open this up. We're going to copy everything from the file, Control C. I'll minimize, again, just in case I need to come back here. Minimize the folder. Oh, let's get that. There we go. And then we're back over here at the default.xml. We're going to toggle over to the source. You're going to see that right here next to design. So it's source, and then we're going to be pasting our snippet that we've just copied from right here. All right, just to make sure that I don't lose anything, I'll go ahead and save using Control S. Now, next part here, we're going to go back to our original parts inventory portlet, and we're going to take the contents of the default.xml over there and paste it over here. So be careful here. You see there are parts inventory API service and so on. The parts inventory portlet is the one from the previous version. So this is our 6.2 application right here with the dash portlet. In the 7.1 world, instead of calling it the portlet, it's dash web. So dash portlet is the giveaway letting me know that this is the previous version of the application. So we're going to go into docroot webinf, and it should be docroot webinf source, and then we should find our resource dash actions there. And this is where we find the default.xml. I'll go ahead and open the default.xml of my portlet, So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be defining our permissions separately. Recall how in the permissioning world, we have a portlet resource and a model resource. So we're going to be defining those resources in two separate places. So for the first one, we're going to be defining the model resource. The parts inventory service module contains our model resource. So therefore, that's where we're going to be defining the model resource. So we're going to scroll through until we find model resource. For me, it's on line 40. For you guys, it should be similar as well. So I'm going to head down here from line 40, and I'm just going to scroll all the way down until we catch the closing tag for the model resource. We'll go ahead and copy that and then paste it within the updated default.xml. So in between the resource action mapping, we'll go ahead and paste that, and then we're going to save the file. Just as we've done before, we're going to need to tell Liferay, hey, I have this default.xml file. This is where it is. So we define that within a property file called portlet.properties, and then the specific property will go within that. So let's go ahead and take care of that next step. So default.xml is defining our permissions. Next step, we need to let Liferay know, hey, I'm defining a couple of permissions in this file. This is where it is. So heading back over to the parts inventory portlet, right, we're going to be creating the portlet.properties at the source main resources folder. So opening up source main, going to right click resources, heading over to new, and then file. The name of the file is going to be portlet.properties, and then we're going to click finish. So portlet.properties, once you got that, go ahead and click finish. All right, now the property that we're going to be defining is on the right-hand side. It's going to be resource.actions.configs with an S. Right, and that's going to be in the resource-actions folder, defining that within the file called default.xml. So this should look pretty familiar, right? This is what we did back in 6.2. So go ahead and save the file. Next up, we're going to head back over to our parts inventory service, and this is where we're going to be running Service Builder. So let's take care of that. So service.xml over here, I've had that open for a little bit. I'm going to go over to the overview tab that's right there, waiting for it to load. And then we're going to click on the little piece of paper here with some binary. It's towards the top. So build services, I'll go ahead and click build services, let Service Builder do its thing. It's going to download a whole bunch of dependencies as you see here, and then just start building our model entities. So building out what a manufacturer is going to be, building out what a part is going to be. Once we have all of that, one of the things that we want to do whenever we run Service Builder is we're going to be performing what's known as a Gradle refresh. Now in our new paradigm, as we're using OSGI, we're using Gradle, our build tool, to kind of help us out with things. One of the shortcomings, or one of the things that we need to do with Liferay Developer Studio is whenever we do things like Service Builder or run Service Builder, for example, we need to refresh our projects. Anything that Service Builder has done, right now our Project Explorer is out of date. So we just got to get everything back up to speed. So there's a special kind of refresh known as a Gradle refresh or refresh Gradle project. So I'll show you guys how to do that. We'll start with the parts inventory -service. So right-clicking parts inventory service, and we're going to head down here to Gradle. From Gradle, you'll see refresh Gradle project and the keyboard shortcut Control F5. So whichever methodology is better for you, feel free to take that methodology. Control F5 or that right-click Gradle refresh. I leave the choice up to you. We got a lot of different choices, a lot of different options in regards to that. Let's do the same thing with the parts inventory API as well. going to use the keyboard shortcut this time around, the Control F5 to refresh my project. I'm going to take a peek here and see what errors might be here. This might be import errors. That's what it looks like. So I'll probably need to resolve some of these as we progress through. Looks like we're having some troubles there. And that's okay, not too big of a deal. We'll take care of those a little bit later. So if you see those errors, yeah, no worries. We will get to those shortly. We have our service.xml all ready to go. We ran Service Builder. Next up, we're going to be taking care of our business logic. We know from 6.2 that the business logic is taken care of in our local service impl classes. And from here, it's really no different. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the business logic from our 6.2 application and place it over here in our 7.1 application. So going to do a little bit of housekeeping once again. I personally don't like to have all of these tabs open when I'm showing you guys. It can be very distracting. So I like to start clean whenever I can. So we're going to go over to the parts inventory portlet, heading down to doc.root, webinf source, and then we're going to kind of go through the directory. Com, Liferay training. Right, we're going to head over to the parts, followed by service, and then impl. From here, this is where we find our local service impls. So doc.root webinf source, com, Liferay training, parts, service, impl. Whew, that's a mouthful there. We're going to start off with the local service impl. I'll go ahead and open that up, and we'll copy everything here. So Control A to highlight everything, and then Control C to copy. Once you have that, we're going to head over to the manufacturer local service impl over in the parts inventory service. So this will be in source main Java, com Liferay training parts service impl, right, same directory, and then manufacturer local service impl. From here, I'll go ahead and highlight everything. We'll remove it and then replace it with what we just had. I'll save along the way. We do see a couple of errors here. That's okay. Once we rerun Service Builder, we're going to be a-okay. Things are going to be all right. So that takes care of the manufacturer. Next up, we're going to be taking care of the parts. So following more or less the same steps, going to be closing my two tabs here. Going to go back to the parts inventory portlet and following that doc.root webinf source. So doc.root webinf source, and then com Liferay training, and then parts service impl. And this is where we find the parts local service impl. Once you find that, we can go ahead and highlight everything once again. So highlighting everything, you can use Control A, copy using Control C, or right click copy. And we're going to head back over to our parts inventory service. So parts inventory service, we're going back to the parts local service impl. And following the same steps, we're going to highlight everything and then replace it with the previous, the 6.2 implementation, I should say. We'll go ahead and save. And we still have a couple of errors that we're going to need to take care of, and that's all right. So we have everything taken care of here, right? I'm going to go ahead and modify or take care of our dependencies. Let's see if there's anything here. Parts local service impl is okay, so we don't need to do anything here. I'm going to head back over to the manufacturer local service impl. Imports here are okay, right? The error here will resolve itself once we run Service Builder. Now heading back, recall how we saw a couple of errors kind of looming around in some of the other places here in the com Liferay training parts model impl. So we're going to take care of those first. So we're going to go into the manufacturer cache model, and all of the errors are actually going to be the same. You're going to see this import here for the string builder, and we're just going to change things up a little bit. It's going to be com Liferay portal, and then kernel.util.string builder. You can remove the string part right here. And then this is going to be the dependency at the end. If you want to copy and paste in the rest of them to make your life a little easier, feel free to do that. That's what I'm going to do. So feel free to do the same thing on your end. So heading over to the manufacturer model impl, we're going to do the same exact thing, right? Looking for that import for the string builder, replacing it with the new import, right? Rinse and repeat for the other two. So we're going to do this real quick. Again, feel free to pause if I'm going too fast, fast forward if I'm going too slow, right? Or maybe you need to take care of something. You can always pause as well. And I'll be here once you hit that play button once again. So very good. That takes care of those errors right there. I'm going to run a Gradle refresh on the parts inventory API using that Control F5 key, just to make sure that everything that is updated is over there, not getting any sort of surprises here. All right, so with all of that taken care of, I'm going to take a look down here and the persistence. I'm going to make sure there's no, there is. So I need to take care of this as well. And just taking a peek, making sure there's no serious errors up there. Again, don't want anything to come and bite us. Right, so taking care of the import error within the manufacturer persistence impl. Right. Control paste. I'll save that file there. We see all of the errors go away. So that's very good. Let's do the same thing here with the parts persistence impl. Just updating the import so that we're able to actually import the proper thing. And again, to find out, what this was in the beginning, you can again kind of do a little bit of digging through our source code to try to find what was updated. All right, so very good. Let's go ahead and rerun Service Builder so that all of these, all of the errors, everything that needs to be updated is indeed updated. So we're still here in the parts inventory service. We're going to go down to the service.xml. And then from the service.xml, we're going to run our service builder project or build services once again. So that takes care of that part. Reran service builder. We're going to run our project one more time, or refresh our project one more time, I should say. So Control F5. And let's take a look here. Very odd. On my end, it looks like it went back to the original. So that's not right. Let me take a look here in the manufacturer. So the impl has been taken care of, but everything else here kind of reverted back. So that's my fault. Should have followed the instructions. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing that we did previously. Feel free to do the same thing on your end. So my apologies there. Yeah, I'll try to get this up and running as quick as I can. There we go. Right, got a couple more here. As you can see, with the tabs, it's easy to get back, but on my case, I can only get up to 4 that are displayed. Right, so not all of them show up, but a fair amount do. That's perfectly fine. All right, so we got that part taken care of, and the other ones are okay. So everything looks good. I'll go ahead and close everything to kind of start from scratch. All right, so we kind of had to take a brief detour. We can see how bringing in code from the 6.2 world can create other issues. Again, a lot of them are going to be, finding where the dependencies are going to be located. We've moved a lot of things between 6.2 and 7.1. So we've taken care of that. Let's go ahead and move on to what we really wanted to do next. Start building out the view in the controller layer using our 7.1 methodology. So up here, we're going to be creating a new module project. So heading over to File, New, and then Liferay Module Project. All right, here in the Liferay Module Project wizard, we're going to be creating a new project that's going to be called parts-inventory-web. We're going to switch up the default location, or not. Let me see. No, we're not. Never mind. So project name, we're going to leave the default location as is. Make sure Gradle is selected. 7.1 is the build type. And then we're going to be using MVC Portlet. From there, go ahead and click Next. The component class name, we're going to be creating our two Portlet components, as we call them in the 7.1 world. So we'll have the manufacturer Portlet and the parts Portlet component. So we're going to start off with the manufacturer Portlet. So manufacturer Portlet is the name of the component class. The package will be com Liferay training parts. Again, if this is kind of new, if you're kind of like, hey, Eddie, I'm not exactly sure where you're going, make sure to catch at least some of the OSGI aspects, either in the lesson or in the backend developer course. Right, this does have the assumption that you know a little bit of OSGI. So let's go ahead and click Finish. So we have the manufacturer Portlet created. We have the OSGI bundle or OSGI module for the parts inventory web. Now I'm going to be creating the parts Portlet or the parts Portlet component. So we're going to start off by right-clicking on the the parts inventory web, heading over to New, followed by Liferay component class. It's going to be a little bit different here. So this is com Liferay training parts Portlet. Component class name, this is going to be parts Portlet. And then the component class template, we're going to be using our MVC. Let's see if we can find it. There it is, MVC Portlet. Once you have everything ready to go, go ahead and click Finish. So letting the wizard do its thing, creating our parts Portlet. And let's take a look and see where things are. So opening up the source main resources, we see com Liferay training parts Portlet, and we have our two Portlet components, the manufacturer and the parts Portlet. We have a constants package. This is going to contain the name of our Portlet. We'll do a little bit of modification with that a little bit later. So we're going to collapse these. Let's do a little bit of cleanup before we get too carried away. Let's go ahead and get rid of the auto-generated files that we're not going to be using. So we're going to head over to the source main resources, meta-inf resources. Going to get rid of the init and view.jsp. So go ahead and get rid of those two. Gives us an are you sure? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So we'll go ahead and click OK. Next up, we're going to go into the content folder that's up here, and we're going to get rid of the language.properties. So go ahead and get rid of that. Am I sure? Yeah, I think I'm sure this time around as well. All right, so we're going to head over to the build.gradle. We're going to take care of some of the dependencies that we know we're going to be needing. So build.gradle is where we're going to go. I'm going to add a couple of dependencies here. All right. So one of the dependencies that we're going to be needing is the API of the parts inventory. So following what's over on the right-hand side, you can copy and paste. I unfortunately don't have the instructions on the right-hand side, so I'm gonna have to type this all out. So we're gonna tell Gradle, hey, hey Gradle, by the way, I have a compile time dependency, and it's only a compile time dependency on a project, and let me tell you where it is. Okay, just kind of closing things out here. So this is going to be over in the modules directory, parts inventory, right, is the folder, and then it's going to be inside of the parts inventory dash API. Right, so just letting Gradle know I have a dependency on the parts inventory API. We're gonna have a couple of other compile time dependencies. Right, remember how we had issues with the Portlet display template handler and how we had to get that jar file and bring it into the lib folder. This time around, we're gonna tell Gradle, hey, I have a dependency on that jar file, so go get it for me. So this is what we're gonna be declaring next on this line. Okay, and right, so if you're familiar with Maven, this might look a little bit reminiscent, or it might look similar to what you might do in your pom.xml. Right, if you're already familiar with Gradle, you should be, this should be right, pretty straightforward for you. All right, there we go. So I have a compile time dependency on that Portlet display template API. Since it's already within Liferay, it's not a runtime dependency, it's already there. And we got one more, gonna be using Liferay's Java utility to kind of help us out with a couple of different things. Right. So let me finish this up. I'm sure you guys are just waiting for me. So almost done, almost done. Getting my typing practice in. There we go. Again, a big rule of thumb, something that we talk about so much in the backend developer class, is whenever you modify something in build.gradle, you will always perform a Gradle refresh. That Gradle refresh is going to reread this build.gradle and grab those dependencies that we have specified. So highlighting the parts inventory, I'm going to use Control F5 to refresh my Gradle project. Out of paranoia, I'm just going to make sure those are here. So project and external dependencies are all of the dependencies that are being brought in by the build or by Gradle. This is kind of equivalent to the lib folder that we messed with a couple videos ago. So there it is, parts inventory API, com Liferay Portlet display template API. Let's see if we can find, there it is, com Liferay util Java. So we're good there. Let me just minimize here. We can close out of the build.gradle. Okay, and I'll close out of the parts inventory as well. So again, always remember that. Always do your Gradle refresh after the build.gradle. Otherwise, we're gonna have a bad time. You're gonna see errors that don't actually exist. Very good. Next up, we're gonna do a little bit of touch up, right? We're going to solidify the names of our manufacturer and our gradebook portlet. So there's a file that's going to help us do that here in com Liferay training parts constants going into manufacturer portlet keys. Okay, so inside of manufacturer portlet keys, the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to change the name of the class, right? So we'll right click on the manufacturer portlet keys here on the left, heading down to refactor and then rename. So we're going to be changing this to parts inventory portlet keys. Parts inventory portlet keys. And then go ahead and click finish once you have that taken care of. All right, the class is already open, so once this finishes up, we can go ahead and start working in the class itself. So we're going to be replacing this line number 8. Again, if you need to turn on line numbers, you'll have this gray area here. Right click, show line numbers, okay, just in case. All right, so instead of just having it manufacturer as a lowercase m, it's going to be the fully qualified name of the Java class that we're referencing. So the manufacturer portlet Java class is over in com. Instead of dots, we're using underscores. Com underscore Liferay underscore training underscore parts underscore portlet underscore manufacturer. All right. Okay, and then just for readability, I'm gonna drop this in its own line. You don't have to do that. Again, just trying. There we go. Just for readability there. Make sure this is inserted. Right, we're gonna add one more property. Okay, so public static final, right? This is creating a constant. This is a string, yes, and then we're calling this parts, not pats, parts. Okay, and then following similar syntax, com underscore Liferay underscore training underscore parts underscore portlet underscore parts. Again, typically in Liferay convention, what we do is we reference the Java class without the .java, but in this example, we're doing things a little bit differently. That's okay. At the end of the day, this can be kind of whatever you want it to be. All right, next up, we're going to be pulling a couple of things from our previous project. So we're going to be bringing over a couple of helper classes as well as the permission files as well. So we're going to go over to the parts inventory portlet. So parts inventory portlet, going into the doc root webinf source. Let's see if we can find those validator classes. So we'll start there. So com Liferay training. Let's see, parts portlet, and then we have these two validator classes, right? I'm going to go ahead and copy them using Control C. And we're going to be pasting those in the same directory, but just in our parts inventory web. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit, looking for the parts inventory web, com Liferay training parts portlet, and then just paste those over there. So Control C, Control V, right? We have those two over there. So far, so good. All right. Next up, we're going to be taking the permissions files from our previous project, our 6.2 project, and placing them within our updated 7.1 project. So first things first, we're going to be creating a new package that's going to contain those permission files. So what we'll do here is right-click the source main Java, heading over to new, followed by package. So right-click the source main Java, new, and then package. And then the name of the package is going to be com Liferay training parts service permission, like so. Com Liferay training parts service permission. This is in the parts inventory web, so make sure you are in the proper project. Very easy to end up in the wrong one. I'm going to go ahead and click finish. And we're going to follow the same steps. We're going to be pulling those permission files from our parts inventory portlet, placing them over in the respective directory for the parts inventory web. So here in the same directory, or very similar, com Liferay training, parts, service, and then permission. You're going to find those three files there. Go ahead and highlight each one, holding Control and then copy, coming down here, and then Control V. That's better. No errors there. So we've taken care of the permissioning aspect. We still need to do the default.xml and portlet properties. We'll take care of that a little bit later. We have some other classes that we're going to be bringing over And we're going to need to take care of some updates as well. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Let's first grab the class that we're going to be working with. So heading up to the parts inventory portlet once again, we're looking for the class parts portlet display template handler. So com Liferay training followed by template, and then this is where we find the parts portlet display template handler. So we're going to be grabbing that one. So parts portlet display template handler. Right, we're going to look through, we're going to scroll down a little bit. We're first going to be looking for the method get resource name. Right, so an easy way to look for your methods is window, show view, and then outline. You get an outline tab which shows you all of the methods within the class that you're in. This is a really nifty tool. I use it quite often myself. So we're looking for the method get resource name. So I'll highlight that and then it'll show me that it's here on line number 38. Right, so the portlet key is different in our project. So we're gonna update it here and then migrate it and then resolve a little bit later. Right, so here in the return, this is going to be parts. So parts, inventory, portlet keys, dot parts. We're gonna have this error here because of our import, but just make sure things are spelled correctly. Next up, we're gonna be looking for the get name method. So I'm gonna use my outline here to help me out. So we're looking at the portlet title here on my line 33. We're gonna change things up a little bit. We're gonna be looking here on our line 30 and we're gonna change things up just a little bit. So string portlet title, that part is going to be the same. Portal util dot get portlet title, that part is the same. The difference here is just right here with the portlet keys, parts inventory, portlet keys. Portlet keys, there we go. All right, and then I'll save the file there. Again, we'll take care of those errors in a little bit. For now, let's use Control-Shift-O to bring in the necessary imports. That's gonna take care of that for me here with this window. All right, so we have those taken care of. Let's go ahead and save the file once we brought in those imports. All right, so far so good. All right, just gonna take a peek here and see what is brought in, if anything. All right, so I can't find the import, but that's all right. All right, we'll trust things are okay. All right, a couple of other things that we're going to be migrating. All right, so we're going to be migrating all of our JSPs over from our 6.2 project into our 7.0, or 7.1, I should say. Losing track of time these days. So HTML folder, right? And it's going to be here within the HTML folder that we're going to be taking everything that we need, right, and pasting it over into our 7.1 project. So I'll go ahead and copy the HTML folder. Again, want to make sure this is for the parts inventory portlet. I'm going to scroll down looking for the parts inventory web, and we're going to paste this in the source main resources and then meta inf resources. So I'll paste that right there. Cool. So that takes care of that part right there. All right, let's bring over a couple of other things here. Oh, excuse me. Oh, sorry about that. So let's go ahead. We're going to move on and we're going to start updating our portlet components. So I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping and closing these tabs. And we're going to start off by opening the manufacturer portlet.java. We're going to be updating the component property here. All right, let's do that by using a snippet. If you want to use what's on the right-hand side, you can do that too. But I'm going to be using my snippets. Right, we're in folder 3.3.14. We've got a lot of things here, but that's all right. So I'm going to be opening up the manufacturer portlet properties. And I'm just going to be copying all of these here, or the whole file. We'll copy that, head back over to Developer Studio, and then replace the property attribute from line 16 down to line 24. All right, so just switching those up. Let me Shift Tab this over. So I did that by highlighting like so, holding Shift and then Tab, and then it scoots it back over to the left. Going to save the file. Next up, I'm going to bring over the business logic from the 6.2 application to the 7.1 application. If you wanted to take this one step further, you can use MVC commands to take care of the business logic. In this example, we're going to keep things a little bit simpler, right? These exercises are already pretty long. So parts inventory portlet, we're going to head back over there. Webinf source com Liferay training parts portlet. And I'm going to be going into the since we're already here with the manufacturer portlet, let's start there with the manufacturer portlet. Inside of the manufacturer portlet, I'm going to be copying all of the business logic here. I'll take the comment with me as well. No harm in that. Just get an idea of what each one of these methods will do for us. Make sure to grab this private static log down here at the bottom. We'll copy that, paste it into the class here with the updated manufacturer portlet. So I'll go ahead and paste and then save. Right, everything looks good. Going to do the same thing with the parts portlet as well. Right, I'm going to head back over to my filing cabinet. The next snippet we're going to be using is the parts portlet properties. Right, and then inside of here, we're going to highlight everything, copy it, and then same thing, just with the parts portlet instead. As a precursor, since I'm already here, I'm going to open up the old one. We're going to be using that a little bit later, right? So since I'm already here, it doesn't hurt to open it. I'm going to go to the new one, the parts portlet. And we're going to replace this property attribute right here from line 24 to line 31. I'll go ahead and delete it, paste the new one. All right, then I'm just going to scoot this over. Right, so we do see a discrepancy here. Let me compare it to the manufacturer portlet. Capital M for manufacturer. I might have typoed that on my end. No, parts is right there. Parts portlet. Let's do a Control-Shift-O. And that brings in the import. So just wanted to make sure it wasn't on my end. All right, so we're going to bring over the business logic from the parts portlet over here, the old one. So we're going to go take all of the contents within the class, making sure to catch that private static log right there. I'll go ahead and copy, heading back over to the parts portlet, right, and then pasting here. We'll save the file. That takes care of a lot of the business logic there. All right, so we're getting there. We're making a good amount of progress. Let's go ahead and keep on going. So we've migrated our business logic for the parts and the manufacturer portlet. Next up, we're going to be taking care of some of our CSS and JavaScript, and then taking care of our permissioning. So we're going to be copying the CSS and JavaScript folders here. So it's in the doc root. So go ahead and copy those two folders. I'm going to head down here into the parts inventory web and we're going to paste those within the source main resources meta-inf resources folder. So this one right here. So we'll paste those two over there, migrated the CSS and JavaScript files. Next up, we're going to be defining our portlet resource or portlet permissions, right? And so again, we talked about how that is split up now in 7.1. So we're doing it, we did it once for the model resource. Now we have to do it for the portlet resource. So we're going to head back over to our project, our 6.2 project, looking for our default XML once again. So doc-root webinf source, resource actions, and then default.xml. Let me do a little bit of housekeeping here and close all the tabs to the left. We're going to leave this file open for a brief moment. And we're going to go into our exercises folder. All right, so clicking on the filing cabinet, we're going to go into the default.xml. This is going to give us our skeleton, our framework for the file here. So I'll go ahead and copy that. Heading back over to the Liferay Developer Studio. From here, we're then going to create the default.xml for our parts inventory web. So we have source main resources. Right now we need to create the folder on resource-actions. So I'm going to right click source main resources for the parts inventory web, heading over to new, followed by other. In the wizard, in the type filter text, we're going to type folder and we're going to select folder. So general folder. Need to give this folder a name. It's going to be called resource-actions. So just as we've done previously, resource-actions. From here, we're going to click finish. And then let's go ahead and inside of the resource-actions, I'm going to create a new file. This is going to be our default.xml. So we're going to head up here to new, followed by file, and then the name of the file is default.xml. Go ahead and hit finish, and then paste the contents of our snippet here. Now that we have that taken care of right here, next up, we're going to go back to our 6.2 default.xml, and we're going to grab our portlet resource. So this starts here on line number 5. We're going to go down until we see the closing bracket here on line 39. So portlet resource, I'm going to go ahead and copy that. And then we're going to paste it here in between line 4 and line 6. So this is declaring our portlet resource here in the default.xml. Now we know, just as we've done previously, we're going to let Liferay know that we have this file. We usually do that right within the portal.properties. But before we do, there are a couple of other things that we're going to need to take care of within our default.xml. The main one is going to be taking care of our portlet's name. You'll see here the name of the portlet, like on line 23, says parts-portlet. But in our situation, we have changed those up, right? We have defined what the names of our portlet is within our portlet keys. So if you need to reference that, feel free to do so. Otherwise, on the right-hand side in our exercises, feel free to grab that name. So no longer is it just manufacturer portlet, not too far. So this is going to be, let me double check. The manufacturer portlet, there we go. Oh, too far. The manufacturer portlet. Right. So we need the whole name. So com_Liferay_training_parts_portlet_manufacturer. Okay, there we go. We're going to do the same thing with the parts portlet as well. All right, so it's not just the parts portlet. It's got a longer name than that. com underscore Liferay underscore training underscore parts underscore portlet underscore parts. Let's go ahead and do that for, oh, okay, that's it. I thought there were a couple of more, so that was a pleasant surprise. All right, so we need to declare, or we need to let Liferay know that we have this default.xml. So we're going to be creating that portlet.properties file. So we're going to create that at the root level here of source main resources. So I'll right click it, heading over to new, followed by other. And then here in the wizard, I'm going to type file. And it's just going to be a regular general file like we see here. I'm going to click next. And the name of the file is going to be portlet.properties, like so. Once you have that all typed out, we're going to go ahead and click finish. And then inside of the portlet.properties is where we declare that one property, resource.actions.configs equals resource-actions/default.xml, like so. All right, once we have that, go ahead and save the file. Whew. So we're doing a lot of things here, right? The migration process does have a lot of steps to go through. So we're going to keep on going here. So next up, we're going to be migrating our language.properties file. All right, so this one's not too bad. So let's head over back to our 6.2 project, and we're just going to grab that language.properties file. Let me close my other tabs here. Right, so in our 6.2, right, let's see if we can find our language.properties file. So doc.root webm source followed by content. And you can see we have a lot of language.property files. So if you want to copy all of them, feel free to do so. If you just want the main one, language.properties, you can do that too. I'm just going to grab the main one down here, language.properties. Right, and I'm going to move that into the content folder within my parts inventory web. So here in the source main resources, followed by content, I'm going to paste our language.properties. I'm going to go into the language.properties and just kind of peek around, make sure everything is good. Let's see. So far everything looks good. You might want to change down here. Here on the bottom on line 46, it does make reference to the WAR files of the parts portlet. Since we're not using the WAR file, we can go ahead and get rid of that line there. In our snippets, in our filing cabinet, we do have some additional properties we're able to add. So let's go ahead and add those. So inside of the language.properties, then our snippets, go ahead and copy those two properties. Okay. And then I'm going to head back over to Developer Studio. We're going to paste the two properties right there. All right. So we've taken care of our language.properties there. I'll go ahead and save the file. All right, let's go ahead and close the language.properties. Moving on to the next part, we're going to be migrating our ADTs. If you don't have ADTs, for the most part, you're good to go here. You can do some deployment and some testing if you have no ADTs, but if you do, let's go ahead and press on. So we're heading back over to our 6.2 project, and we're going to bring over a couple of dependencies that's going to be helping us out with our ADTs. Right, so the dependencies are going to be over in the com Liferay training template. Right, so source com Liferay training and then template. Right, we're going to be bringing these two classes over with us. So I'll go ahead and copy those now, but what we need to do is create the package that these two are going to be placed in. So once you have those two copied, I'm going to scroll back down to the parts inventory web, and then we're going to be creating those packages. So I'll right click the source main Java, heading over to new, followed by package. Name of the package will be com Liferay training, and then template. So com Liferay training template is the name of the package, and then we'll paste those two classes that we copied over into the template. So I have remnants here. That was the snippet. Let me delete that. For some reason, my Control-C is very finicky. It just decides to work when it feels like working. So I'll go ahead and highlight those two, Control-C, and I'll paste those in there. We have a couple of dependencies for this that we need to bring in. So I'm going to head back over to my 6.2 project. We have this folder here, dependencies. We're going to open that up. Take note of the dependencies that you need. We're actually going to take the whole folder here with us. So we're going to take the dependencies folders like we see here. I'm going to scroll down. So we're going to take that dependencies folder. We're going to scroll down and we're going to paste it within the source main resources of our parts inventory web. So source main resources, I'll just go ahead and paste those right there. All right. Next up, we're going to take the portlet.properties that's right here, right? And we're going to, to make things easier, we're going to replace the whole file. But if you just want to take those two properties within portlet.properties of the 6.2 project and paste those there, you can do that too. I'll leave the choice up to you. So I'll copy the portlet.properties. I'm going to scroll down. We're going to paste it here in the source main resources like so. It's going to ask us to overwrite. I'll go ahead and say yes to all. I'm going to open up my other portlet.properties just to make sure the change has indeed propagated, as you can see here. So that takes care of some of the dependencies or some of the aspects of our application display template. I'm going to take a peek over here in the parts portlet display template. I'm going to do a Control-Shift-O here and then save the file. Looks like there might be some other parts or other aspects we need to take care of. So while I'm here, I'll go ahead and take care of some of those things. Right, so instead of capital parts, we know it's going to be just parts with just a capital P. So it's not all caps, it's just a capital P part. So parts. I know I'm going a little off track here, but I personally don't like seeing errors, especially the errors that we can change really quickly. So I'll take care of that here. I'll exit out of this class. All right, so we're still working with getting our application to be ADT compliant. All right, and so we already copied over the template handler from our parts inventory portlet here within our parts inventory web. I was just there, and coincidentally, we're going to do some stuff here anyways. And so we need to follow sort of the OSGI way of doing things. One of the things that we do in the OSGI world is we register our classes as components. This is going to let OSGI know that we want to do something in the OSGI world. That's kind of the long story short. So again, we cover that in much more detail in the backend developer course and the OSGI lesson. I'm going to click back into my filing cabinet. I'm going to open up the template handler.txt. So template handler.txt. It gives us the component annotation that we see here. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Heading over to my Liferay Developer Studio. We're going to paste this above the declaration of our class, like so. Going to see a couple of errors here. They're just import errors, so we can go ahead and use Control-Shift-O, take care of those. We'll go ahead and save the file, and that takes care of that. So we're almost there, right? We're inching closer and closer to getting this application all upgraded. All right, so next up, we're going to be working on some of the JSP aspects, getting things to render on the JSP side in regards to our ADTs. So I'm going to collapse some of these here. Our JSPs are located in source main resources, meta-inf resources, and in this situation, we're going to be here in the HTML folder. And then from HTML, we're going to go into, it should be parts. From parts, we're going to go to configuration.jsp. Right, we're going to be looking for a very specific tag. It's going to be the Liferay DDM template selector. We're going to look for the class name here on line 25, and we're going to switch things up a little bit. So instead of the template handler for the class name, we're going to be using the part class. So part.class.getName. So the name of the specific part in this situation. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And with that, we no longer need the template handler variable. So let me see if we can find that template handler variable. Let's see. It's escaping me. I can't see it. Let me just control find it. Template handler. There it is. So we can go ahead and get rid of that here from line 16 down to line 18. We're not going to be using that. Right. And last part here, go ahead and save the file. All right, next up, we still need a little bit more in order for us to be able to select a specific ADT. So we're going to be creating a configuration interface to kind of help us out here. Now this part is more of a 7.1 aspect. Technically speaking, you could kind of leave things the way they were in the 6.2 world, but we're trying to get this as far into the 7.1 world as possible. So we're going to make it so that you can configure the ADT over in what we call the system settings or the configuration API. And that's a different discussion for a different day or a different course as to what all of that kind of means. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like. So we're still here in the parts inventory web. Going to right click it, head over to new, and we're going to be selecting interface. So right clicking the parts inventory web, heading over to new, followed by the interface. We're going to be calling this the parts configuration. Right. So that's going to be the name of the interface. But before we get too carried away, we're also going to need to specify our package. So this will be com Liferay training parts and then configuration. So take some time to type that out. And then once you're good to go ahead and click finish. So I'm going to click finish right here on my end, creating that interface. Typically speaking, if you know exactly what you're going to be doing, we typically jump to the build.gradle so we can declare the dependencies that we're going to be needing. So down here, build.gradle is where we're going to go. I'm going to add another dependency here. So the dependency compile only, okay, from the group biz a quote bnd, the name here, right, biz, same, almost the same name, bnd lib, and then for the version, it's going to be 3.1.0. Again, remember our rule of thumb, whenever we do something in the build.gradle, we're always going to be doing our Gradle refresh. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Right, to kind of expedite things as it's refreshing, I'm gonna head back over to the parts configuration.java. So here we are, the parts configuration up at the top. Towards the interface, I'm gonna add an annotation. It's called @metaOCD. Okay, we're gonna be pinpointing, well, in this case, ourselves. So the ID here is going to be com Liferay training parts configuration dot parts configuration, and that part is good. I'm going to use Control-Shift-O to bring in the import for the MetaOCD. All right, so that's up at the top. The next part, we're going to be defining the two attributes that's going to help us with being able to configure our ADTs. First one here is @metaOCD. Okay. We're going to say this is not required, so the required attributes is going to be false. Oh, and my mistake here, this is meta AD. We're defining attributes here. So this is not required. We're going to be creating a method here, public string display style. Right, we're going to declare one more here. Okay, required equals false. Right, public long display style group ID. All right, this is a method, so I need to throw my parentheses there, my brackets. I need required, there we go, and then I'll save the file. All right, so this interface here is going to be the first part of our puzzle in regards to getting things kind of working. It looks like that my computer has, the VM itself does not have much to work with, 646 megabytes. For now, I'm gonna ignore it. If this becomes a bigger problem later, I run out of space, I can delete some of my old instances since I'm not going to be using those. Right. So not a huge deal, but if you need to later on, you can delete some of the Liferay bundles, Liferay instances, so that things will run a little bit more smoothly. Won't get those errors. All right. So again, this is the first part of the puzzle here with this API, here with this interface. All right. So still need to bring in another dependency that's going to be helping us out within the parts inventory web. So we're going to head back over to our build.gradle. That's right here for me. And then we're going to be pulling this dependency from our next snippet. So we're going to click on the filing cabinet. Right, 3315 here. We got a lot of text files here to work with. So we're going to keep on pushing on. We'll get there pretty soon. Got the text file called more dependencies. We're going to open that up and we'll see one dependency here that we're going to bring into our Liferay Developer Studio. I'm going to go ahead and paste that there and then always follow that rule of thumb. So we're going to use that Control F5, bringing in the dependency as it's needed. It's going to download it, and then we're going to save the file. Right. So I need to save the file first, and then we do the Gradle refresh. In my case, I use Control F5. All right. So next steps here, what we're going to do is we're going to head over to the parts portlet. So heading over to the parts portlet, we're going to be referencing that, that interface that we've just created. So there's a very specific way that we have to do this. It's going to be private. The specific part is this volatile. It has to be volatile. Parts configuration. Right, and then the reference object, parts configuration with the underscore. Need to bring in the interface, so Control-Shift-O is going to bring in the interface for the parts configuration. That part is good. Next up, we're going to scroll up and we're going to go back to the component annotation. Right, so I'm going to add one more part here. Right, so we're going to add it under the component annotation right here towards the top. Right, so this is configuration PID. That's going to be equal to our configuration API that we just created. So com Liferay training parts configuration like so, the interface. Need a comma at the end since we're listing off attributes. Do I need this in quotes? Yeah, I do. So I'm going to put this in quotes. So what are we doing here? Right, that's kind of a good question. So a lot of this is covered in the backend developer course. Basically, we want to take our application and make it configurable from the system settings of Liferay. And so what we do is we follow what we call the configuration API, an OSGI standard or part of the OSGI. We create this interface here that basically says, hey, for this interface, I'm going to have two attributes that I want to be able to modify. So these are the two attributes here, this display style and the group ID. Here in the parts portlet, by declaring this configuration PID, I am saying I am going to implement this interface here, and I'm going to provide a way to be able to manipulate those attributes as well. So that's what the configuration PID part is going to do for us. It's targeting the interface, letting the OSGI world know that the interface is going to be implemented here. That bottom part that we did with the whole volatile, this parts configuration object, we're going to use this object to help us manipulate the attributes. So from the UI, if I want to change the ID, and we change it through the UI, we're going to catch it here with this parts configuration object. We need to add a little bit more here. So this is going to be the next part. So let's jump back over into our filing cabinet, into our snippets. We're going to be looking for the activate method. For me, it's up here towards the top. I'm going to go ahead and copy all of the contents here. Head back over to Developer Studio. Right, and we're going to be pasting it at the end of the class. Right, so I'll paste at the end here, so very end. Right, it's kind of hard to see, but a curly bracket should be right there. So there it is. Paste this guy here. We'll use Control-Shift-O to bring in the imports. On this one here, we want to bring in the org OSGI service. So we're going to bring that one, and then the other org OSGI service. So be careful with that. All right, so let me make sure I spelled things correctly. Configuration, because it's being used right here. So very good. So just wanted to make sure it is getting picked up. Right, these two things are indeed the same thing. So that's good. Right, so I'll go ahead and save the file. There. So the story is not quite finished just yet. We're going to be implementing to REST in another class. Since this parts portlet.java is already getting pretty big, we're going to split things up a little bit here. So we're going to right click the com Liferay training parts portlet, heading over to new, followed by class. Going to be creating a new class here. I'm going to call this parts configuration action. Right, for the super class, I'm going to click at the browse button right here. I'm going to use the wildcard followed by a dot. You don't have to do that. It's just kind of habit for me. We're looking for default configuration. All right, so default configuration action. So default configuration action. All right, it looks like both of these are okay. I want to pull the more recent one here. So take note how there's the 3.0.0.jar. That's the one that we're going to want. From here, I'll go ahead and click OK, followed by Finish. All right, we're going to head back over to my filing cabinet. We're going to have the configuration action annotation. And that's going to be the snippet that we're going to want to pull from. Go ahead and copy everything here, heading over back to the Developer Studio. And then we'll paste everything there. Get a couple of errors here. This is very simple. Import errors. Control-Shift-O is going to take care of those guys. And still want to bring in the org OSGI service. So once you have that one selected, go ahead and click Next. Same thing here with the component, org OSGI component. It takes care of those imports. Right, next up, down at the bottom, right, we're going to get back that parts configuration reference object. So private volatile parts configuration. Okay. Underscore parts configuration. Again, if we wanted to, we technically could have done everything over in our Portlet class, but it's already getting pretty big there. So kind of saving us a little bit of space. Control-Shift-O takes care of that. I am outside the class, so need to get back in the box. Otherwise, it's going to continue to complain. All right, let's head back over to our filing cabinet. So we're going to be going into the activate method. We're going to copy the contents here. Head back over to Developer Studio. Right, I guess we can add it right there. Control-Shift-O. I added it above, right, just so that it's going, oh, selected the wrong one. It switched it up on me. Org OSGI is the one that we want. Right, I'll stay consistent with what we did. I'll add it at the bottom here. There we go. Right, again, we used Control-Shift-O, brought in the proper imports. Next up, we're gonna head back to our filing cabinet. We're gonna bring in the process action method.text. Right, we'll highlight everything, copy it, paste it into the class above that private volatile, right? All of the errors here we can resolve using Control-Shift-O. Bringing in the imports takes care of those. And I like to save along the way just to make sure if something happens, we'll still be okay. Let's head back over to the filing cabinet. We have one more snippet we need to bring in, the include method right here. Go ahead and highlight everything within this include method.text. Right, heading back over to Developer Studio, and then we can paste it in here as well. Me personally, I like to keep things that are more relevant up at the top. Boilerplate code, I like to keep a little bit further down. Control-Shift-O takes care of our imports. Go ahead and save the file, and then we're good there. So that takes care of those aspects. Almost home free. We've introduced a couple of changes here, and because of that, we're going to need to do a little bit more updating over in the configuration.jsp. So let's head back to the filing cabinet first. Init.jsp imports. Right, I'll go ahead and copy those. I know those for sure are going to go into the init.jsp. So I'm going to go into the source main resources of the parts inventory web. Right, metainf resources, init.jsp inside of the HTML folder. We'll go into init.jsp and go ahead and paste those there. And I'll save here. All right, so I'll follow the instructions here that I have and make sure that it works as it should. So I'll go ahead and copy the contents here. in the init.-jsp. And then we'll paste it here. And there we go. So it looks like those are taken care of because of these guys. So it looks like we're good there. Let's head over to the configuration.jsp for our parts portlet. So parts configuration.jsp. We're going to remove the display style and the display style group ID. So we're going to remove these guys up here at the top. Right, and we'll leave it within the DDM selector. I'll do the same thing over here in the view.jsp. Let's see if we can find those two variables. There they are on line 65 to 72. You can get rid of those right there. I got this trailing tag here in the view.jsp. I'll get rid of that. We'll save the file and we're almost there. Let's go ahead and deploy this and see how it goes. Before we get too carried away, I'm going to remove the previous one. So parts inventory portlet. I'll go ahead and remove that. We don't want things to conflict with what we're about to test out. All right, so now that we've removed that, we're going to go ahead and deploy our 3 module projects. So this is going to be the parts inventory web, parts inventory service, and the parts inventory API. Once you have those 3, go ahead and drag and drop it into the Liferay server, and we'll let those deploy. So we're waiting for it to do its thing. Right, so it's still publishing. We can see that down here at the bottom right. And strangely enough, you'll see that there's an error there. Let's take a look at this using the terminal or the GoGo shell. I'm going to type LB. Right, you see there's an error on the parts inventory web. There's a command called deag. If you just type it as is, it'll show you what the error is. So the error here is we're trying to bring in a specific import, but it's not quite working. All right, so with that error in mind, the long story short here is within the code, we're trying to get a specific property. And so we're trying to bring in this import package to kind of help us out. If you do a little bit of digging, you're going to find that this package is not exactly where you would quite expect it, as the long story short. And so we're going to be pulling in, or we're going to be using a different sort of way to bring in the properties that we need. So we're going to go into our parts inventory web, source main Java. We're going to go over to the parts portlet display template handler. So parts portlet display template handler. And we're looking for the get templates health path that has a string within it. So here on line 73. And we're going to get rid of what we have here. Right. And then we're going to go back to our filing cabinet. And we're looking for the get template help path. So get template help path. Go ahead and copy everything there. Heading back over to Developer Studio. And we'll go ahead and paste that there using Control-Shift-O to bring in our dependencies. Right, it's going to be the COM Liferay kernel configuration. Once you have that, go ahead and click Finish. Right, go ahead and save. And then we'll wait for the redeploy to occur. All right, so we see that the error has gone away. Let's head over to our Liferay instance. I'm going to refresh the page. Let's get us back to the sign in. So to sign back in again, we had that issue a little bit ago. So /c/portal/login, and then we'll log in that way. All right, test.liferay.com, password of test. All right, so I'm going to remove the old portlet here. Remove. OK. Trying to click on that plus button. Widgets. Training. Going to add the parts here. And there we go. We have the parts portlet. This exercise has been pretty long, so spend some time to do a little bit of exploration here on your own. You have the ability to add the parts. Over in the content section, you have the manufacturer down here. And then the last part you're going to want to test is within the control panel configuration. And then system settings. Here within the system settings, we should see the setting that we have added. Let's see if we can find it here real quick. So it doesn't show up right away. We would probably have to do a little bit of digging to find it, but that's okay. All right, so those are the different points in regards to taking a look and testing this out. Again, another long video, another long exercise. I want to thank you again for sticking with me to the end. I know that I say that in every video, but I really do mean it. To appreciate your time here with me, and I will see you in the next video.